Why do some anime fail? Well, first I should probably define what I mean by failure. Financial failure, of course. The only thing that really matters. Anime is a business, after all. No matter how much or how little the end product was the result of someone just doing their job or having an artistic vision, if it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell. Most anime studios, if they want to try something risky like anything that doesn't have a pre-established fan base, then they need something that will for sure bring in the monies to keep the studio going. From big studios to small studios, this is the case. Name recognition isn't enough sometimes. As the saying goes, Sunrise makes Gundam to fund their not Gundam shows. Even Trigger, the most hyped up anime studio at the moment, has to do things with a certain popularity to keep them going. Little Witch Academia may be an original series, but it has a fan base. A wildly popular OVA, funded by the Japanese government, meaning it didn't have to go through the normal channels, and a Kickstarted follow-up that widely exceeded its goals. The end result is that half of their TV anime so far are less risky by the mere fact that they have an established fan base. So now we come to Flip Flappers. Flip Flappers is a good show. It sets out to do a thing and does it pretty well. If you're interested, it's worth a watch, and it's animated well. Anime of the season contender if there weren't extenuating circumstances. Flip Flappers failed. The easiest way to tell that is to look at the most important indicator of how well an anime sold, the Oricon number. Oricon is a Japanese group that compiles charts of how well things sell in Japan, factoring in the various stores and websites. The Oricon number is how well did the anime's Blu-ray first volume sell? To a lesser extent, DVDs factor in, but as Blu-ray takes on more and more market dominance, they will become less relevant. The number is used as an easy reference benchmark for how well a show did. Flip Flapper's Oricon number was 883. Even if you have no idea how an Oricon number works, that seems pretty low. There are a lot of ways to break up the ranges of Oricon numbers, and different shows have different circumstances. A shonen anime meant to sell more manga can do worse in Blu-ray if it sells a lot more of the manga. Likewise, merchandise, such as figures, body pillows, CDs, etc., can be used to offset low numbers. Without significant outside sales, the generally accepted break-even point is about 3,000. While originally set there as a bit of a joke, it's still a good indicator for a lot of shows. At 883, we're well below that number. Considering the fact I can't even find a picture of a figure at the time of writing this, the chances of significant merchandise sales are looking pretty slim. And being an original work, there's no source material to bump up in sales either. The only conclusion I can come to is, as I said, Flip Flappers failed. But why? That's a question I can't actually give a solid answer to. There are many reasons why an anime would fail, and I can only speculate as to why Flip Flappers failed specifically. To know with more certainty would probably involve having to have been in Japan prior to and while it was airing, and keeping an eye on the numerous factors, and, barring the time travel I would need to do that now, there would have to be websites, probably in Japanese, that I don't even know if they exist, and if they did I couldn't read them to give me the information I need. So we're stuck with guessing. The first thing to look at is time slot. When it comes to watching anime at your own convenience, America is far better off than Japan. And that's not just due to places like Crunchyroll. Even in the before times, our ability to easily watch something after it came out is a lot better than Japan, where if you didn't have a recording device, or took to the high seas yourself, then you had to watch it as it aired. That's still the case over there. One of the very factors leading to television dying over here. This kind of forced scarcity is an often not talked about element of the buy the Blu-ray culture. If you want to watch it whenever you want, wait for the Blu-ray to buy it. Now, I couldn't find any big sources of competition for that time slot in the season, but there's another aspect of time slot that's important. A lot of anime that is the kind of anime viewers watch and not the general public is considered late night anime, which typically airs starting at 23 o'clock or 11 p.m. and ending at 28 o'clock or 4 a.m. While typically not to that extreme, it's not uncommon for channels to use a larger than 24-hour time frame to indicate that something airs late that night into the next day. Flip Flappers aired at 21 o'clock. That's 9 p.m. That's about 2 hours before the late night anime time period, and when the audience that would probably want to watch it would be paying attention. At 9 p.m., it's sort of stuck between the more family-friendly evening anime and when it should have been airing. If there's any aspect of time slot that would affect how many people were watching it, and thus would go on to buy the Blu-rays, it's probably this. Next is marketing, which happened first, but I'm making second because it made more sense to talk about why people not have watched it at all after why they might not have watched it at a certain time. It's hard to tell if a show like Flip Flappers wasn't marketed too well. I found signs of the usual pre-release marketing standards. The PV and key visuals with accompanying premise blurb. The PV, or preview video, is a commercial normally about a minute to a minute and a half that shows off some of the animation and the main voice actors and actresses. The key visuals are basically a poster that shows off what they intend the feel of the show to be. They're often sent out alongside a blurb that explains the show, which is often the badly translated description a lot of shows have on my anime list, as well as character design images. I can only assume that these are linked and distributed along the usual lines, so people should have known about the show. Past that, any TV, internet, and real-life advertisement is lost to the sands of time. Or at least, I have no idea how to check to see if that information still exists. I haven't heard enough time checking yesterday's local weather. The only thing I can think of as to why the marketing might not have worked is if it failed to properly grab people's attention. On its own, the PV has some pretty intriguing parts, but the key visuals are just all, look at these cute girls, but they're upside down and there's some weird buildings? Likewise, the story synopsis doesn't sound too spectacular. 2 girls in a different world looking for crystals and they're magical girls? It honestly sounds pretty generic, but the show shines in its execution, which people who weren't impressed by the marketing wouldn't have watched. Then there's the issue with competition. Competition doesn't have to just come from competing time slots, but also competing genre appeal. Flip Flappers has pretty heavy Yuri undertones, so much so that it's overtones in some places, which puts it up against 2 other shows that aired that season, Hibike Euphonium Season 2 and Shumatsu no Izeta. Now, this isn't a judgment on how good those shows are or not. Despite the controversial canonicity, or lack thereof, of the ship in Hibike Euphonium, a lot of people, myself included, didn't hear about it until after Season 2 ended, which is late enough that the damage would have been done. It's the 2nd season of a beautifully animated, down-to-earth, popular series with Yuri undertones. That would have put a lot of eyeballs its way and away from Flip Floppers. After all, fans of Japan can't buy everything. Then there's Izeta. Izeta has added bonuses. Looking at just the key visuals and synopsis, one of the characters has boobs. This is important since there's an undertone of something sexual that contrasts it with the more downplayed Euphonium and Flip Floppers. 2, the characters look more Yuri-baited together. Both key visuals have lewd hand-holding, but Izeta and Fine are looking at each other. 3, military otaku. Izeta has guns and tanks and shit. That's cross-focus appeal. Guns, in my Yuri, it's more likely than you think. As we've learned from Girls and Tanks are popular. So, Flip Flappers, a show without much unique initial presence and competition from a known entity and something more overtly showing its hand, might have been left at the wayside. It honestly feels like the show was an underdog at this point, but sadly one that didn't manage to rise to the top. Finally, we have the most base of reasons it might not have sold well. It just wasn't ecchi enough. There's a reason I brought up Izetas. Ignoring for a moment the pre-established fanbase a light novel adaptation brings, the reason they are typically so ecchi is because uncensored Blu-rays sell. Flip Floppers didn't have the ecchi to pull the eyeballs and then the incentive to buy the Blu-ray. It only really gets overtly sexual in episode 7, and that's brief and more symbolic than pandering. Anyone looking for just that would have left ages ago. So, to the best of my ability, this is why I think Flip Floppers failed. Given the fact that there's a lot of information I just don't have access to, I guess you can consider this to be pure speculation. It's just that, as American fans of media from another country, it's nice to know just how much that divide affects us. You'll notice at no time did I mention the American market at all as any factor in this show's success or failure, and that's because, for the most part, it doesn't. Sometimes we can affect them, but Oricon doesn't even count sales made to foreign addresses. Buying American DVDs and Blu-rays does help the industry indirectly, but mostly by giving them the funds to keep licensing more stuff. In an era where everything is licensed by default, it doesn't really translate to trends. The only real way to make an impact on a series directly is to import merchandise directly from Japan. Not that there's much to buy in this case. So, why does some anime fail? A number of reasons. Each season shows get lost in the ever-increasing wave of anime. It's a tragedy, but one only ever seen in hindsight. Flip Flappers is just one of many. Maybe next time things will work out better. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it and want to see more, make sure to subscribe. If you really want to see more, head on over to my hastily thrown together Patreon and send some money my way. I'd like to give a shout out to the website someanything.com, where I got the data for the Oregon numbers. If you like the background music, it's from the arranged OST of the game Gemfire, or Royal Blood in Japan, and was composed by the same woman that composed the ending theme to Flip Flappers. Follow me on Twitter if you really want to, and I hope to see you again soon.